Hi everyone, it's Kim from Art Anthology. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be doing something a little different and maybe a little unusual. But a while back I was scrolling through my Pinterest feed and I came across this picture of a beautifully decorated seashell, and I clicked on it to see how they did it. And once I read what they were using, I knew I had the perfect products in my art anthology stash to decorate the seashells. So today we are going to be coloring some shells with Art Anthology's Shimmering inks. And then for the ones that we want to decorate, we are going to be using our Posca pens. So these are very, very easy to do, very easy to color and decorate. So let's get started. And I'm just going to pull out some plain shells that I got at the craft store. And sometimes nature has already sort of decorated them, and I could still use one of my shimmering inks on top of that. But I'm just going to pull out some of the shells that are just more white. And if they have a little color on them, that is all right. That doesn't affect anything. But let me just show you how easy it is to color these. I'm going to use the shimmering inks. I am going to put them in a palette just so I can control them. Let's see here. Let's pull out Panache, which is kind of a teal color. We'll pull out Enchanting, which is a pink, and then let's pull out Allure, which is a yellow. There's no right or wrong colors. I have used the black, which is Midnight, and the brown, which is Decadent, and those are beautiful as well, and I'll show you some of those shells. So the first thing I want to do is shake this up. I want to make sure I get that shimmer off the bottom, have that mixed in, and I'm just going to squeeze a little bit out into my palette, and I'm going to get them all ready to go here. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of water because these are so intensely colored. If I add a little bit of water, they'll still be plenty intense for the shell, and then I can color more shells with them. Okay, so I'm just going to add just a little bit of water, not a lot. And the other thing I love about the shimmering inks is when it dries, especially on the darker colors, you can see that shimmer. So I'm just going to take a brush and just paint it on. The shell is so porous, it quickly absorbs the ink. Now I do need to let these dry for a while. I want to make sure they're good and dry, even though they may feel dry to the touch because they are so porous. It does take them a little time. So a lot of times I will color them at night and then the next day actually decorate them. But you can just see how intense that color is. Now, if I wanted something even more intensely colored, I could go back with a second coat. But generally, I find that one coat is enough. And let it dry because sometimes it does get a little lighter and it actually sort of like changes. The shells are all different. So you can see here the natural color of the shell is still apparent, which is fine. Now, even though this one looks kind of light, I'm going to let that sit and dry because as that ink is absorbed, the shell will probably turn more of the teal color. Now I have sometimes like this pink, that's pretty hot pink. And that may be a little more than I want. So I have a bunch of colored ones here. And let's see, some of these I've already played with. Let's pull this one out. And let's pull a yellow one out. I think those will be two good examples. I'm going to set these others aside to dry. Oops, I guess we want that one. Okay, and I'm going to set these to the side. Now, if I want to change the color or maybe make this a little less yellow, I can do that. I'm going to actually pull out, if I can find it here, Radiance, which is more of an orange. So let me just put a little bit of that in my palette. Now these are dry. So I had colored these before. And you certainly don't have to do this, but if you want to change the color up a little bit, you can. And I'm just going to use this Allure on this one. And I believe this one was Indulgence, which is more of a red color. It kind of came out more peachy on this one. But if I want to change the color, and this one isn't bad, but sometimes it's so bright, like the pink one that we just did, I can add a second color to this. So let's add the yellow or the Allure to this one. And it somewhat pulls off, the second color I put on here, pulls off some of that initial color and then changes it with the second color. So I have both the yellow and the red on that. And let's say I want to change this yellow one, which is the Allure. And I'm going to add the orange or the Radiance to it. Now, before I do that, you might be able to see, looks kind of golden there. I don't know if that comes through or not, but that is the shimmer in the ink. So that is just another layer on these shells. So let me just add this. And again, it's not super orange, and this just kind of tones down the yellow. So you can change the look of those shells. So one is a little too bright, like this one is still wet. I can see let's just I'm just going to tap this off on the bottom here because that's still really wet. Let's just go ahead. Normally I would let it dry, but since we aren't going to have time to let it get really dry, let me just add a little bit, and you can see how that kind of knocks back how pink that is. And changes the color. Now, the other thing to remember is these will stain your fingers, as you can see. I've been playing with some of the dark colors, so just bear that in mind. It will come off. But if you have a beautiful manicure or you don't want your fingers stained, you might want to wear gloves while you're working with the shimmering inks. Okay, we're going to let those dry, and we're going to pull out some ones I have colored previously, and we're going to start decorating these. And it is very, very simple to do. So let's see here. Let's pull this one out. We'll pull the brown one out. This is colored with Decadent. And let's pull this one out. Actually, let's do this one. So even though this is a big shell, it didn't take me long to realize how is it textured. That kind of determines how I can decorate it. So this has a lot of little narrow ridges, where this one, the ridges are a lot wider. So that does kind of make a difference in what I'm going to do to this. And a lot of the shells are decorated with just lines and dots. So we're going to keep this very, very simple today. We're not going to make this difficult by any means. And if you want some other inspiration, I encourage you to get on Pinterest and just search for colored shells and see what other ideas there are for decorating these. Now, let's see here. I've just got my Posca pins out. I'm just going to grab a couple colors here. On a lot of the shells, you'll notice after you color them, you can kind of see a natural line on them. This one is pretty obvious. And even though this has kind of some chips out of it, I'm still going to use it. There's nothing wrong with using a shell that isn't totally perfect. And I'm going to use this kind of natural line as a guide as I decorate my shell. So I'm going to just start with one of my Posca pens, and I'm using the PC3M style, which is a bullet shaped pen. And I want to shake this up. And I like this because even though it's a bullet shape and not a fine tip, if I stay on the tip, I can draw a fine line. If I have to pull it along the side, I can get a thicker line. So that gives me some options. And I also know this purple, my violet pen, this one is very, very juicy. So lines and dots, that's what we're going to concentrate on today. And I can kind of see a natural line here. So I'm just going to start with a line. And I'm just going to draw along the base here. I generally start in the middle and work to the side. And I got a big hole there, and I'm just going to go over that, you know, not worry about it. And then just come on this side and follow that natural line around. And this is so much easier than like trying to eyeball it and get it straight, or, you know, get a ruler out, try to do something like that. And then on this one, I'm going to just start by trying to stay on top of that ridge. And you want to take your time and not try to go fast, because this should be somewhat relaxing. And then if I do take my time, I'm a lot more accurate, and then I don't get off and wind up doing something I don't want somewhere on the shell. Now, if you do something and you don't like it, let the paint dry, let the Posca pen dry completely, and you can go back over it with another color and pretty much just literally paint over it. I had done that with something I didn't like, and then I just took another color pen and went over it. I wanted a different color, and it just covered up what was on there before. And the other thing you'll quickly learn is sometimes the ridges on the smaller shells are so small. I have to have my really highly magnified glasses on to see where I'm going. So I'm kind of running into where it's rough, and that's okay. I'm just going to leave it like that. It doesn't have to be this perfect line down the side here. And there's a big hole, so we're just going to kind of just go by that, not worry about it. Okay, so we've got our purple on. Now let's, before we do anything else on that, we need to make sure that dries. So I'm going to take the blue Posca pen, and I'm just going to use another one of these imaginary lines, and I'm just going to pull up a little bit. And I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but you will get the idea of what I'm doing. And I'll finish that side and go around this side. But I want to move on to another one just because we have very limited time today. And then we'll come back and work on that purple. Let's go to this one. And let me pull out a couple of colors here. Now this one has ridges too, but they're much broader, especially on the base and in between. So for this one, let's do this. And you can just play with your favorite colors and do whatever you want on these. But I'm going to color in between, and I'm just going to pull up from the base and pull this back as far as I can. Then I kind of get where it's too narrow. But the Posca pens are so ideal for this, because like this shell is kind of rough. You can kind of hear it scratching. And when I first started, I was trying to basically decorate the entire shell, and sometimes it was just too much. So I quickly learned that sometimes simple is best, and I'll show you a couple samples of what I mean by that. Okay. And then I think what I'm going to do is go along and decorate the tip here. So I have a fairly wide base here. So I'm actually going to try to draw just a little bitty circle. And this is where I'm just going to eyeball it, trying to stay the same distance from that edge around the base. And since this is broken here, I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm just going to stop rather than come up here. I could do that, but I'm just going to stop because that is broken. Okay, so let's let this dry and let's go back to our purple one. And I'm going to add some dots to this one because this is so narrow. I can't really draw a circle. I'm just going to dot this. And dots and lines are a large part of what I have seen decorate these different shells. So I'm going to just literally, and I'm going to try to keep it just to the tip and go down straight and come up straight. If I try to do it from the side, I get more of an oval, and I don't want that. I truly want more of a dot. And I think what I'll do is I'll do it up here higher since this is so rough along the edge. Let me just do it up here. And again, I'm going to try to keep my tip straight down, straight up. Really no pressure, just lightly dot that. And again, take your time, because when I try to hurry, that's kind of when I pick it up off to the side and then I have like a little tail on it. And if I do something like that, I just move on. I'm not going to go back and try to fix it because I'm just going to make it bigger and more obvious. But that's just how easy it is. And because the Posca pens are so nice and juicy, I don't need pressure. And I'm going to miss my hole there. We'll pop over that and just pick up on the other side. I think the imperfections just add more interest to them. And then I will go back again and add that blue around the base. But let me just show you a couple samples. Actually, let's finish this one. And then I'm going to show you a couple samples here, and then we'll let these dry. And if we have time, we'll come back and decorate them some more. So this time, I'm just going to put, I like to put white on all my shells somewhere. And I'm just going to go back because I have that big circle. And I'm just going to dot it, just like we did on the previous one on the purple. Very, very simple. Okay. So let me just show you a few while these dry, and then we can come back and add to those if we have time. But this will just give you some ideas on decorating. So this is the first one that I did, and you can see I have a bunch of dots on that and just kind of some areas that I drew some lines on. So I have quite a bit on this, and this is one with the narrow little ridges. Then I did this one, and this has some teeny tiny, even though this is the same type of shell, you can see much, much smaller ridges. So if I do something and then I'm like all these little dots and it's like, oh my gosh, this was just too much. I have already gone back and added this blue line, but let's say I just didn't like all these teeny tiny dots. I can still go back in there. And this is the one where I really need some good glasses. And let's just say I want to connect all those dots now. I can do that. So if I think I have a better idea at another time, I can go and do that. And you know what? I'm almost thinking now, I would rather just make this a nice thick line. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to cover up all those teeny tiny dots rather than trying to make another skinny line. And I think I'm going to like this better than all those tiny dots. Yes. And then if I want, I can go do something on top of this kind of white, big white solid line. So there we go. So very easy to change them up. If you change your mind, you can just pull out your Posca pins and keep decorating those. Here's some that I did that I'm going to use for Halloween, and they're not scary. I think they're very pretty, actually. Again, this is the first one that I did. So I went crazy with the dots and the lines. But look at what I can do if I just keep it super simple. This just has a white line down the ridge. Here's one where I use the silver. So don't be afraid to use the silver or gold. And then this one I had a little more room. So those are more like little rectangles on there. But here's two that I decorated extremely simple, just with lines and little dots. And this one is nothing but the ridges, the top ridge being outlined, and then just a little bit where they all met in the back. I just colored that in. But I love this one. And this is colored with the black shimmering ink, which is called Midnight. And even though it's black, you can see once it soaks into the shell, this is one coat, it turns more of a gray. So I was really thrilled with that. And here's another one that was colored with Midnight, and you can see how light of a gray that turned. So that's why it's important to let it dry. And here's another one where I simply just went between the little ridge there and then just decorated it with circles and dots. So you don't have to get super fancy when you're decorating. So what can you do besides just color these? These I'm going to color and just leave in a dish as home decor. I think these are gorgeous. I just use the shimmering inks. Some of them, like this one has like, I don't know, barnacles or whatever those are called. But nature had already colored some of these in for me. Those lines were already there. So I just use the shimmering inks on them to color them, add a little more color, and they're perfect as they are. So I do have some little ones. So if I wanted to make, let's say, a card, I pulled out some backgrounds that I have sprayed. So here's one. I can cut this down to whatever card size I want, and I just pulled out a die cut that I had colored as well. So let's say I wanted to make a kind of an ocean scene. I would trim this down, cut this apart, and I could add my shells on the bottom here. Because these are small, I'm not going to decorate them with a Posca pen, but I could just arrange some shells on the bottom. These would mail in a padded envelope without getting crushed. Then I could just put a sentiment or stamp a quote on this, and I would be set to go with some kind of a sea-themed card. If I wanted to do something on a canvas, and I don't have a canvas prepped, but I could use a canvas for the larger shells, or this is a gel print that I did. I could attach this onto something, some heavier chipboard, and it would hold the bigger shell. So again, let's pretend this is my seaweed in the ocean. And now I could pick through some of my colored shells. If I just wanted to put some here on the bottom. Now, I don't think something this big, I would put this definitely if I wanted something that big on a canvas, but I could put some of my smaller shells here and create another sea theme. And I would go through and pick out a variety of them. If I wanted to use something that I had decorated, these don't have to be solid. I could mix these, and I could definitely have some of my decorated shells on here. I'm just going to pull this one out here just because gives a little more contrast. And again, I could put some kind of a quote up here or add to it in whatever manner I wanted to complete a canvas, or again, just a mixed media piece. So there's a lot of things we can do besides just using them for home decor. But let's go back. We have just a little bit of time. Let's go back and work on this one a little more. And again, this one's a big one, so I probably would use this one just for home decor. I don't think I could attach this to a card, and even a canvas, it would be a little big. So let me just go back, and I'm just going to go pick up where I left off. And again, this is what's kind of neat. As long as it's dry, you can just keep working on these. And you can work on several at once if you want to go back and forth. And you'll probably decide kind of the different styles that you like. And this is all broken in here. So I'm just going to come and pick up over on this side here. But you will decide kind of what shells you like to work on, and you know what style of design that you like. Let's use a silver because I do like the metallics. And we'll just add just a few dots. I'm just going to add a few dots up above this, and I'm going to get back on that ridge. We'll see if we can see. Oh, I think, nope, that's too light. Let's just do the gold. And this has not been used before, so you can see that it's white. I'm just going to press that down, and I always get, the first time I do that to prime my tip, I always get a little puddle. I'm going to let that silver dry. I'm not going to try to wipe it off. And then after it's dry, I will go back over it with the gold pen. And that will just cover it up. But it would be, I'd have a big mess if I try to just wipe that up. So just leave it. And I just kind of try to eyeball this so I can kind of keep them in some sort of a line. And then when I get down to the side, I will probably just go down to 2 dots and then 1 dot. And then I will just continue that on the other side. And again, where it's broken out, I'll just skip over that and go over to the next ridge. So I hope that gives you some inspiration on how to use your Posca pens and your shimmering inks on something other than just paper and canvas, and create a summery home decor piece using seashells. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again in the future.